Romanian deadlifts, also known as the RDL. Very similar to a traditional deadlift. However, we want to make sure that our foot placement is slightly more narrow than your traditional stance. So we're going to make sure that our feet are in line with our hips. You can even tighten them up just a little bit more if you feel more comfortable in that position. Okay? Very comfortable, but make sure that your knees aren't caving in as you perform that movement. Continue to add external pressure on the knees. Just like the traditional deadlift, I'm going to start with a hip hinge motion, pushing that butt back, keeping a soft bend in my knees. Shoulders stay nice and square. Also keep your neck in line with your spine. As you place your hands onto the bar, okay, make sure your palms are outside of your shins. Bringing your shoulders down, pushing your hips into the bar. I'm going to drive through my heels. Perform that pelvic tilt at the top of that movement, keeping the bar tight to my legs. Squeeze my glutes. And then focus on that eccentric position by hinging the hips, pushing the butt back. Once again, bringing that chin down to the chest, neck in line with your spine. Okay, bring that barbell all the way to the ground. We want to make sure that the butt is slightly higher on this one here because we're going to get a lot more hamstring engagement. So once again, I'm going to push through the heels, squeeze the glutes as I give that pelvic tilt at the top, maximize contraction, and then work on that hinge position on my way down, keeping external tension on my knees, making sure they're not caving in. Now with any deadlift or hinge movement, there are a couple things that you want to make sure that you pay attention to. We're working on pushing the butt back, making sure that our hips are hinging, reaching back, keeping the heels nice and flat, making sure that you get your torso parallel to the ground and keeping your neck in line with your spine. Okay? Any extended position is going to be bad for the lower back. Okay? If you are shortening that movement, you're not getting the full benefit of that stretch in the hamstrings and the posterior chain of movement. So once again, make sure that you have the hips hinged back, soft bending your knees, getting your chest parallel to the ground. Push away from the ground, keeping your back nice and flat, chin down to the chest. Make sure you perform that pelvic tilt at the top, squeezing the glutes nice and tight. When you're performing your deadlifts and you start to become fatigued, one of the biggest mistakes is creating a rounded back, okay? So once again, keeping my back flat. As you get tired, you're going to want to avoid the back rounding and the shoulders coming forward, okay? Simple cue to correct that. Just roll the shoulders back, keeping the scapula nice and engaged the entire time. Now let's talk about all three forms of your deadlifts. We have a traditional deadlift in which our feet are slightly outside of hip alignment. We have a RDL, also the Romanian deadlift, when your feet are more narrow in line with the hips. And then the third variation will be the sumo deadlift, where our feet are outside of our hip alignment, toes are turned outward. Okay? All three variations of the deadlift are beneficial to chaining the posterior chain of movement. However, the closer your feet are, the more you're going to target the hamstrings and less of the glutes. Feet are outside of hip alignment slightly, I'm going to get a combination of both. It's going to be a nice balance between glutes and hamstrings. When I open my legs up really wide and turn those toes outward, I'm going to train more of the glutes. I'm also going to train a lot more of the abductors, which is the inner thigh region of the body. You're going to perform the same position for every variation, keeping the shoulders square, keeping your chin down, neck in line with the spine, and pushing away from the ground as you drive through the heels. Remember, always perform that pelvic tilt at the top of that movement, squeezing the glutes, maximizing contraction, keeping the chest up nice and tall.